This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Your child wakes up in the middle of the night with a high fever, and the pharmacy is closed. You could wait agonizing hours just to get a doctor's appointment, or you could prepare ahead of time with Jace Medical. Jace makes it simple for families to stay ready with kits like the Jace Case, ready-to-go supplies of prescription antibiotics and essential medications for travel, emergencies, or everyday life. With Jace, you're investing in more than health. You're investing in true peace of mind, knowing you're prepared for the unexpected. It's fast, it's affordable, and it could be life-saving. Just go to jace.com, answer a few quick questions, and a licensed doctor reviews your information and ships your medications straight to your door. Keep yourself and your loved ones prepared, no matter what comes next, at jace.com.
I survived 9 months in captivity, and I've spent my life exploring how other people survive what should have destroyed them. I'm Elizabeth Smart, and these are the Survivor Files. Every week, I'm with survivors who lived through the unthinkable, abducted, stalked, controlled, and nearly silenced. These are stories about what it takes to make it out alive. Listen to the Survivor Files with Elizabeth Smart on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If your bookshelf and your For You page are equally important to your personality, welcome home. Pro Society is a weekly podcast that's part book club, part group chat for anyone who thinks Pride and Prejudice and Love Island deserve the same level of discourse. Each week, we're connecting the dots between books, the internet, and pop culture with your favorite writers, book talk creators, and plenty of overthought opinions. Yeah, I'm obsessed. Listen to Pro Society on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you hear the new episode of the Hey Jonas podcast?
We are at D23, so we'll see who stops by.
The cast of Frozen stopped by. Kristen Bell, Josh Gad, and Adina Menzel.
I auditioned for Frozen.
What?
For Kristoff. They said, okay, what are you going to be singing today? I said, I don't know.
That must have been why you didn't get it.
That's probably why.
Plus, John Stamos, Hayden Christensen from Star Wars, and more.
And I guess I can share that...
No way. Listen to the latest episode of Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This show contains mature content and adult themes. It may not be suitable for young audiences.
It's not about career. It's about believing in something. It's about prosperity. And it's about caring and empathizing and wanting to create the best, the most true to life, the most real.
Well, that's something that you wouldn't hear a lot of Hollywood people say. What you just
That's
said.
why I don't hang out and talk to those Hollywood people, because they're there to hurt me. They're there to hurt my view.
From Variety and iHeart Podcasts, this is Variety Confidential, the life and legend of River Phoenix. I'm Tatiana Siegel, executive editor of film and media at Variety. Over the course of the past 3 episodes, we've explored the life of the late actor, musician, and activist River Phoenix, from his unconventional upbringing to the once-in-a-generation talent that led to a promising career in Hollywood. We also went deep into the events surrounding his untimely passing at the age of 23. And all these years later, River Phoenix's death is still shocking. On the 30th anniversary of Stand By Me, River's co-star Richard Dreyfuss told Variety, quote, "There are certain actors like Philip Seymour Hoffman. When Philip died, what we were grieving about was not only that he died, but that he took a very well-known future away from us. We knew he had all these great performances to come. That left a big hole. The same thing is true of River Phoenix. He was without question the best of that group of actors that came up at that time. Movie stardom is not just acting talent. It's not just your ability to move an audience. It's a combination of a lot of things, and he had it. He died so young that it was a real theft, a real robbery," end quote. In our final episode, we'll unpack how, with only 14 film credits, River Phoenix has left an indelible mark in Hollywood and beyond. We begin with addiction specialist and former host of Celebrity Rehab, Dr. Drew Pinsky, who joins us to discuss the deadly combination that is celebrity status and opioids, and how River's tragic death should be viewed as a cautionary tale. Dr. Drew provides his perspective as a professional who has worked with a range of Hollywood actors but did not treat River Phoenix personally. Dr. Drew, you've seen more than your fair share of celebrities struggling with addiction. Were you familiar with the circumstances of River Phoenix's death back in 1993?
I was aware of it, and I knew people that were around him who had been around him that I treated later.
He was only 23 when he died. Does being famous that young put one at a greater risk?
Yes and no. I mean, we all are aware of childhood stars and the potential for adverse outcomes there. As my friend Danny Bonaducci always schooled me, the child stars that he saw did poorly came from childhood trauma, came from problematic family systems. And then you add to that the parentalization, the adultifying of kids, making them work in an adult environment, have adult responsibilities. That in itself is traumatizing to kids. Kids need to be kids. And when you put them in adult roles, it's not good for them. And on top of that, many of these productions are so tight and sort of intimate that they feel like a surrogate family to these young people oftentimes. And then when the project ends, everyone just goes their separate way, and it's often very startling to young people. It feels like another abandonment, another loss. So those are where the risks come from. Then if you have addictive genetics on hand, they have a tendency to manifest in that the kid starts looking for solutions to their pain, and they find their way to substances, and then they have a second problem now, and that is the problem of addiction. And if they're very famous and can keep people around them, or have who either endorse or can't restrain the use, then it will progress. Now, River Phoenix, that was sort of a strange case. It was stimulants, and he had clearly had a cardiac arrhythmia and went down, and there was a lot of, I don't know, I don't know the details of the event, but it seemed like more could have been done. But everyone was so fearful that his addiction, his drug use would be exposed, that he didn't quite get the care he should have in the timely manner he should have. And he certainly didn't get addiction treatment that was effective.
Can you walk us through how celebrity drug use often starts?
Like everybody else. Celebrity drug, like everybody else. Everybody. Any addict. Any addict, it typically starts in adolescence and young adulthood. It typically starts with cannabis. Alcohol use typically starts in the home. That's where they get their first drink, typically. And a genetic disorder is activated. And if you add trauma into that, then they, for the first time in their lives, feel well because of the drugs, and they keep using, and then they trigger this progression we call addiction, which takes over all the other priorities in their life. I mean, the best example of the history of this and the recovery is Robert Downey Jr. He is by far had the most serious life-threatening addiction and did what he needed to do, which was drop out, focus on his recovery and nothing but his recovery, not even contemplate coming back, and then came back slowly with the direction of his recovering community and staying in the program to this day. And he was in prison and he was dying of opiate addiction. And he now has a flourishing career because he did what he needed to do. But when he was in his recovery, he didn't know if he was ever going to act again. And the problem with a lot of celebrities and treatment these days is they don't stay in treatment long enough and they return to work prematurely, both because they love their work and it gives them a lot of sort of narcissistic gratification, but also because they make a lot of money for themselves and other people. And so they push to bring them back to work. And that's the biggest liability for recovery, for treatment with celebrities.
According to the autopsy, River had been speedballing the night of his death. Dr. Drew, can you explain what speedballing is?
Speedball is mixing a stimulant with heroin. It sort of enhances and sustains the high. Very popular. Cocaine and heroin was very popular back then. Nothing unusual there. Usually, hard to know how he progressed, but usually heroin is the primary drug, and then cocaine is just used as an adjuvant, trying to enhance things.
So in your opinion, why do you think many of these young celebrities, like a River Phoenix, are uniquely vulnerable to drug addiction?
They're not uniquely. There is nothing special about celebrity. I cannot say that strongly enough. It's not as though I have a separate diagnostic manual for celebrities. They are the same. It's just like everybody, there's a context for their addiction. And their context is if it's child stardom, I explained how parentifying, you heard all that, right? So they have some trauma coming in. Then if they have the genetics, then they go. And if they have the power to avoid consequences, they progress. If they are still dependent or if they have people in their lives like employers and things who can pull them aside and put them in treatment, well, they do better.
River's overdose death predates Matthew Perry's by a few decades. It also comes after John Belushi's. And yet, whenever these celebrity drug overdose deaths happen, including Philip Seymour Hoffman and Chris Farley and Heath Ledger, and more recently Angus Cloud, it comes as such a shock. But it shouldn't, right?
Right. Yes. Drug addiction is a potentially fatal illness. And I have the only published research on this. And what we were able to show in our research very clearly is that people that seek celebrity have more childhood trauma, have more narcissistic defense strategies, and tend to have more addictions. And the big celebrities, the very powerful celebrities, construct their lives in such a way that they dismiss people from their inner circles who attempt to pull them aside and get them to do something about their addictions. So the addiction is able to spiral unrestricted. And when addiction progresses without any constraints, it leads to death typically. And you can't force people into treatment in this country. That maybe people tried. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. There are two aspects of addiction that everyone doesn't seem to understand. It's progressive and it's potentially fatal, commonly. So a surprise when a drug addict dies is a lack of understanding of what this disease is. Your probability, if you're an opiate addict, your probability of dying is significantly worse than the majority of cancer patients. Why we can't get that through to people, I don't know. The fact that we hand out drugs to people on the street is nothing short of manslaughter. They will die. It progresses no matter where you get the drug, no matter how you get the drug. It's a progressive illness.
Matthew Perry and River Phoenix were friends after working together in A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. Do you think it makes any difference to someone who sees a friend go through addiction or even overdose in terms of their own drug usage?
I mean, it doesn't stop their addictions. Sometimes it gets them to come to treatment because it gets through their denial a little bit what can happen. But drug addicts are concerned with one thing and one thing only, and that is doing drugs. And every other brain system, all their other good judgment, all their other good intentions serves that distorted motivation. So to get through that requires a lot. And somebody else's death sometimes gets there, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. And maybe it slowed Matthews down. And he had a very different course of addiction than River Phoenix. And Matthew Perry struggled with treatment. Matthew tried treatment, tried very hard. Maybe that's why he lived as long as he did. I don't know. But there was obviously some missteps along the way.
In your opinion, has anything gotten better in Hollywood since River's death? In terms of studios, producers, agents, all of them being more supportive of young stars and getting them help when they need it.
You mentioned John Belushi early, right? And then people did not understand addiction. Dan Aykroyd has talked about that. He's talked about how, we knew he did drugs, but we didn't understand what addiction was. We didn't know what was necessary to get better. And so since that era, yes, things have gotten a lot better. And so we've come to a more modern understanding of addiction, but I think people still have this sense that people should be able to be fixed, or if they would just do treatment. Look, on average, for a bad alcoholic, it takes 4 treatments and 5 years to get 1 year of sobriety. That is on average. And that's alcohol. Now, alcohol can be really horrible, of course, but it's not opiate addiction. And so there's still a great deal of confusion about the progressivity of these things and the seriousness of them and what's required to get well.
For anyone listening, whether it's a parent or a friend or a family member or around someone who has substance abuse issues, what would you advise? What would you caution against?
Do not walk on eggshells. Address it very directly. Do it from a place of love and concern. And there's only, and I mean only, one thing you can do that will contribute to the outcome, and that is you yourself go to Al-Anon or another codependency program, get a sponsor, and work a program. Because the disease is interpersonal. It takes every strength and every weakness, including other people in that person's life, and pulls them in. The Audrey 2, the plant in the Little Shop of Horror, is a perfect model for addiction. If you go near the plant, it eats you. That's how addiction works. Unless you have somebody else there pulling you back, and that is your sponsor or therapist or things like that, on your own, it will find a way under your skin, and every good instinct you have will be used to maintain the disease. So you must, if you're actually, or you have to leave with love and caring. You don't leave out of anger and rejection, because sometimes loss is something that will catch their attention. But ideally, in their life, stay in their life, but change the dance. And the only way to change that dance is by your codependency being managed. If somebody has a first-degree relative with addiction or alcoholism, and they are starting to lose control of their relationship with any substance, or they're using dangerous illicit substances that can kill you on their own, you're in big, 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 big trouble. And they need treatment immediately. And to not treat them is certain progression, certain trouble, and possible death. You yourself, the non-addicts, have to also have a support system, because you will get sucked in. It's a cunning illness, and it drags you in. Not intentionally. There's no intention behind it. It's all the brain systems, including interpersonal, are directed towards getting drugs. And so you'll get dragged in, I promise, without some help. And that's why parents can't do this alone. That's why loved ones can't do this alone. You can't, because every good instinct you have, every important feeling you have about that person will get used to get to drugs, period.
At the time of River Phoenix's death in 1993, the actor had about a month left of filming on Dark Blood and had been slated to play the reporter in Interview with a Vampire, a role that Christian Slater eventually stepped in to fill. These unfinished works were a stark reminder of a life taken too soon. The large and very public outpouring of grief surrounding Phoenix's passing was also a testament to the actor's impact. According to Variety reports published in the weeks following his death, simultaneous private memorial services were held for him on November 4th. Actor Ione Skye, who co-starred with River in A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon, organized one in Los Angeles, while his family held another at their home in Gainesville, Florida. River's longtime agent, Iris Burton, called Variety after the memorial service in Gainesville and described it as a, quote, love-in, end quote, and, quote, a meeting of a circle of friends, end quote. In addition to family, those there included River's girlfriend, Samantha Mathis, his Sneakers co-star, Dan Aykroyd, and The Thing Called Love co-star, Dermot Mulroney, Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist, Flea, and REM frontman, Michael Stipe. As for the circumstances surrounding River's death, Burton told Variety the following, quote, being a young actor, growing up so fast with so much being offered, and doing so many things is insanity. They should stop playing the field, stop playing around, stop the partying, just concentrate on their work and their good fortune. I hope they will all learn from this tragedy, end quote. A private invitation-only tribute was held 2 weeks later on November 19, 1993, at the Paramount Theater. Variety reported that the guest speakers included Sidney Poitier, Rob Reiner, Jerry O'Connell, Naomi Foner, Richard Benjamin, John Boorman, Christine Lahti, Peter Bogdanovich, Helen Mirren, Iris Burton, and River's mother, Hart Phoenix. Tom Cruise, who was on location for Interview with a Vampire, sent a note, quote, I'll miss never having the opportunity to work with him, end quote. Jonathan Pryce, who co-starred with River in the uncompleted Dark Blood, wrote a touching paternal note saying, quote, "I only knew him for 8 weeks, but I felt I could know him forever," end quote. Nearly 3 decades after his death, River Phoenix's influence continues to reverberate throughout Hollywood. From his fearless choice of roles to his commitment to activism, he set a precedent for young actors to pursue meaningful work while staying true to their values. To help us understand the actor's lasting impact, Variety's executive editor Brent Lang and chief film critic Owen Gleiberman join us now. Together we'll discuss River's influence on the film industry, his enduring cultural resonance, and the lessons his life and death have imparted. Owen, when you think back to the 90s, who were the other actors who were in the same league as River?
There was definitely a new generation of actors coming together in the 90s. I guess you could sort of say that their forebear was Sean Penn, because he was that one actor in the 90s who'd come up through that kind of cheeseball culture, but was much more serious, much more moody, much darker. So the new generation was darker, but then you had people like Matt Damon come along, in a sense, who was, a very serious actor, but also kind of an old school young leading man in a way. Like someone like River Phoenix probably had the potential to be that and might have become that. I mean, I think it's so interesting to talk about what would have happened had he not died. I think, he could have gone anywhere. He could have been a very, very big star. He could have had leading man roles. I think the best way to think about what would have happened to River Phoenix had he lived is to follow the prototype of Brad Pitt. He went after the role. River Phoenix went after the role that Brad Pitt got in A River Runs Through It. And you can sort of see him following that trajectory, being this kind of good-looking, moody young star. And people didn't take Brad Pitt that seriously at the start, but he proved himself as an actor in movie after movie. And I think River Phoenix would have had, I'm not saying he would have had the exact same kind of career, but I think he would have had those kinds of opportunities to be the leading man, to be in popcorn movies, to be in deadly serious indie movies, the whole thing. Would River Phoenix have ever made comic book blockbusters or something? I can't predict yes or no, but what I can say is he would have had that opportunity. They would have rolled out the red carpet for him to play those kinds of roles. And at a certain point, he would have probably had to make a choice of, am I going to do that mainstream Hollywood thing? My guess is that he would have, because I don't think he had the kind of chip on his shoulder about that stuff that someone like Sean Penn does. And I'm not dissing Sean Penn by saying that, because Sean Penn, in a way, has walked the straight and narrow for decades as an actor, always taking just roles that he thinks are interesting. And there's a tremendous integrity to the way that he's done that. But then there's also the thing that just says, all right, let's do a blockbuster. Let's do a comic book movie. Let's try that on. Let's see what it looks like. Plenty of great actors have done that. I think River Phoenix, I could see him going that way, because I just think he had that kind of spark. I think he was a very serious actor who didn't take himself that seriously. He was not pretentious about himself. And I think he kind of went with the flow.
And Brent, how about you?
I mean, I think if you look at basically Leonardo DiCaprio's career, there's no reason that River couldn't have played almost any of those roles. And I would assume he would have been up for most of them. I mean, I could have seen him. He was such a good actor that he could have played the role that Leo played in Titanic, or he could have played the role that Leo nearly played in Boogie Nights that ultimately Mark Wahlberg played. I mean, I think he would have been up for basically anything. I don't think he would have been sort of the Russell Crowe burly man. It would have been more of the kind of the sensitive star, but he really could have done it all. And I think he also could have straddled that gap between kind of the more commercially minded fare and the more director driven stuff, because already he had worked with really great filmmakers. He'd worked with Spielberg, he'd worked with Sidney Lumet, he'd worked with Gus Van Sant, he'd worked with Rob Reiner. I mean, all of these people are very serious minded directors, and it sort of showed how in demand he was. He worked with Peter Weir at Mosquito Coast. He was Harrison Ford had told Spielberg to cast him in the Indiana Jones film. So he had the endorsement of a lot of major industry figures at the time of his death.
Thanks, Brent. Now let's listen to this interview from the early 90s.
No, I started acting through auditioning and trial by error, basically.
How old were you then when you started?
10.
Was that so?
Mm-hmm. Television commercials, and then later you get cast in a film if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really explain why I understand what I understand. I just do. Mm-hmm. And to try to figure it out, I think, would kind of ruin it, you know? Mm-hmm. I want to leave it like a mine of gold, you know, without ever mining it, you know, and selling it. I don't want to sell it off. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to understand it in a way that will exploit the pureness. So I just leave it. I don't understand it, but I believe it.
You're a natural.
I'm not saying anything.
I'm saying it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
In many ways, River Phoenix's legacy continues through his brother Joaquin, who was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood and won the Best Actor Oscar for playing Joker in 2020. In his acceptance speech, Joaquin dedicated the award to his late brother and even teared up toward the end when he spoke about a lyric River wrote.
Now, I've been a scoundrel in my life. I've been selfish. I've been cruel at times, hard to work with, and ungrateful. But so many of you in this room have given me a second chance. And I think that's when we're at our best, when we support each other, not when we cancel each other out for past mistakes, but when we help each other to grow, when we educate each other, when we guide each other towards redemption. That is the best of humanity. I want to, when he was 17, my brother wrote this lyric. He said, "Run to the rescue with love and peace will follow." Thank you.
That was one of the most memorable Oscar moments that year. Brent, what impact did River's death have on Joaquin's career?
I don't actually really know what the impact was on Joaquin's career, other than, when Joaquin Phoenix accepted his Oscar, he quoted his brother, and that sort of says in a song that his brother had written. And so that indicates that his impact on his brother was pretty seismic, and it continues. And I think if you look at Joaquin Phoenix and how talented he is and just sort of generationally gifted he is, it's possible that River Phoenix would have had an even bigger career, because I think that he had all of Joaquin Phoenix's kind of chameleonic talents and his ability to really unearth this kind of rich emotional life with his characters. But he was a little more forward facing and a little more charming, frankly, in a conventional sense. So I think he could have had an even bigger career than his brother.
And Owen, what are your impressions of the Phoenix brothers' performances side by side?
Well, it's fascinating to think, had River lived, of the idea of these side-by-side brothers both having these blossoming careers. But I think it easily could have happened because they're really such different actors. Joaquin Phoenix, from the beginning, my first memory of him was seeing him in To Die For. He had that very Joaquin quality that he still has. There's something dark about him. He's drawn to playing, kind of twisted characters. Not that there was not a core of normality and empathy to him. I mean, he has that. That's why he's a great actor. But, he definitely likes to dance on the edge and on the edge of darkness and all of that. And I think that River Phoenix has some of that. I mean, they came from the same family, and I think both of them reflect that strange upbringing they had, where, they were raised by hippie parents who moved around all the time. When River was 3, his family joined the Children of God religious cult. They were missionaries in Venezuela. He talked about being sexually abused and was very negative about that cult later on. It was a family with a very, eccentric upbringing that I think left its mark. But I think that River Phoenix probably could have ended up being more of the leading man. But, to the extent that he had this James Dean quality, that is very much a leading man quality. It is the classic Hollywood tradition that goes back to Dean and then through Robert Redford and actors like Brad Pitt. I think River Phoenix was on that spectrum. And I think he would have had a lot of opportunities, not just because he was very good looking, but because it's that magical charisma that makes a star. He could have had the opportunities to do in the 90s, let's say a romantic comedy. Would he have taken that? Maybe, maybe not. But I think he could have done it in a way that Joaquin Phoenix was just not going to do that. I think Joaquin would have ended up being, relatively speaking, the darker of the two. But who knows? Because River Phoenix was, as I said, very drawn to playing alienated characters. It's just hard to say. But I think he would have blossomed into a true leading man, if that's not an outdated phrase.
Brent, let me ask you, do you think River influenced the generation of actors that came after him?
I think of him as being really one of the leaders of that generation of young stars who kind of emerged in the latter half of the 1980s. And what he'd done very successfully was he'd shown that he could do a number of different genres. He wasn't a certifiable box office draw yet, but he was kind of putting all the pieces together where you could see him having a career that kind of was able to move seamlessly between sort of more adult-oriented, artistic types of films and maybe some more commercially minded stuff. Of course, that kind of depended on the choice he made in his career. And I think he was still sort of trying to figure himself out as an artist. My Own Private Idaho was really a very important film for him because it gave him a kind of underground, edgy cred, and it moved him from being a sort of pinup for people to being a kind of a more dangerous star. He was kind of reinventing himself with that movie. But it's definitely not inconceivable that he would have had a career that was very similar to Leonardo DiCaprio, where you sort of started off with these showy performances and then you kind of moved more into mainstream fare. And even at the time he died, he was about to do Interview with the Vampire, playing the role that Christian Slater ended up playing. And that sort of shows that Hollywood still saw him as one of its kind of most promising 20-something-year-old stars. If you look at this generation of actors, I mean, first of all, I think what's interesting is if you talk to a lot of this generation of actors, they would probably cite River Phoenix as an influence of them, which sort of shows just the extent of his impact, not just on his death, which I'm sure people remember, but also his life and his work. And I do think that, Timothée Chalamet definitely has a sort of a similar appeal to River Phoenix. He seems sensitive, sort of artistically minded. He's, obviously he's very attractive. And there's almost a certain femininity to both of them that is really appealing and I think really comes through on film well. And actually, if you look at a lot of the great stars, there is a certain femininity to them. Even Brando and Dean, a kind of a gentleness that all of those actors share. And I think River Phoenix really had that too. You want to kind of protect him when you see him on screen. And that's why when he's in certain movies and there's this scene in Stand By Me where he talks about the milk money being stolen and he kind of breaks down. And it really sticks with you because you do want the best for that character, because there is some quality in the actor saying those words that allows you to forge this kind of very intense connection with him.
In addition to Timothée Chalamet, who else do you think closely resembles River's acting style?
Definitely Jacob Elordi. I mean, there's a lot of other actors that, I mean, even Tom Holland a little bit, although I think River Phoenix was probably a better actor. No offense to Tom Holland, but just that he kind of had more range. But, definitely Tom Holland. I think Barry Keoghan is probably a little more eccentric than River Phoenix, but more aligned with Joaquin probably. But Chalamet is probably the one who's the most similar.
Owen, how do you think River influenced the generation of actors that came after him, including Joaquin?
I think River Phoenix might have had a real influence on the actors who came after him, in that his sadly few years of prominence really did overlap with the start of the American independent film movement, the American independent film revolution. I mean, the American independent film movement had gone back to the 1950s, but I'm talking about the revolution that started in the 90s, where these films suddenly became talked about in a much bigger way. They got seen. They became big movies, even as they were carrying through a lot of the darker themes and themes of alienation and questioning authority and questioning just everything about life that you saw in the films of the 70s. And so he kind of dovetailed with that. And I think in that small handful of extraordinary performances that he gave us, he showed the way for young actors. He showed that young actors could embrace these kinds of roles and find a kind of truth in them, because that is what American independent film was supposed to be about. Hollywood was about, projecting a certain fantasy, but indie movies were going to return us to the idea of cinema really trying to find, put its finger on certain truths about things. And that happens with actors. That's what actors do. It's actors who take us into the truth of what they're showing us. And he just had that quality. There was something very, very pure about it. I first noticed him and noticed his talent in Stand By Me, but the movie that really made me wake up and say, oh my gosh, I mean, this guy is a major actor, was Running on Empty in 1988. And the whole soul of that in the movie is River Phoenix and his performance, because he is the son who has now essentially grown up. And he wants to go to college. And can he do that? It's like he can't do that without putting his family in danger. So it actually becomes this very, very interesting situation. And River Phoenix's performance, or I would say it's very James Dean-like, is that this is exactly the kind of role where you would expect the kid to be kind of a rebel, or now rebelling against his parents, saying, I want to go to college. You can take your hippie stuff and I don't care about that. But he doesn't play it like that at all. He plays the character as extraordinarily sincere and this really very sweet young man. And there's something just very authentic about his performance. He roots you in that movie. He makes the whole movie work. And it becomes actually a powerful experience. And I think when you watch his acting in that movie, where he was only 17 or 18 when he shot it, you see not only his extraordinary skill as an actor, you just see the quality he had as an actor, this quality of sincerity where he could be, I don't know what the word is, the everyman, the person where, you just identify with him. He's real, but he's also in a way your best self. That is part of the magic of what stardom is, where you want to watch this person, but he's also projecting almost this kind of down-to-earth moral quality. He had that. I think had River Phoenix lived and thrived into the 90s, the only thing I can predict about his career is that he would have been extraordinarily successful. Because I think he had that double-edged thing of he was a fantastic actor and he was a very sexy, good-looking, glamorous star. And that gives you a lot of power in both directions. I think any number of filmmakers would have wanted to work with him. But beyond that, I think by definition, it's unpredictable because the way the movie business works is you do a certain movie and it becomes big, let's say, might be an indie film, might be a Hollywood film. And then that role defines you in a certain way. And everything you do after that, it doesn't have to necessarily just repeat that, but then you're kind of taking off from that in this direction. But I think he would have been huge.
River Phoenix's story is one of brilliance and heartbreak. He serves as both an inspiration and a cautionary tale, reminding us of the beauty and fragility of human life. As we close this season of Variety Confidential, we honor River not just as an actor, but as a person whose light continues to shine through the lives he touched and the art he created. Thank you for joining us for this season of Variety Confidential, the life and legend of River Phoenix. Don't forget to subscribe and read more at Variety.com. Variety Confidential is hosted by Tatiana Siegel and produced by Karen Mizuguchi and Sydney Kramer. Written by Anna Moslin, Karen Mizuguchi, and Tatiana Siegel. Executive produced by Dea Lawrence. Variety's co-editor-in-chief Cynthia Littleton and Ramin Satude. Edited and mixed by Aaron Greenewald. Variety Content Studio, executive producer Alex Hughes. Please refer to sources and citations on Variety.com.
I survived 9 months in captivity, and I've spent my life exploring how other people survive what should have destroyed them. I'm Elizabeth Smart, and these are the Survivor Files. Every week, I'm with survivors who lived through the unthinkable, abducted, stalked, controlled, and nearly silenced. These are stories about what it takes to make it out alive. Listen to the Survivor Files with Elizabeth Smart on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If your bookshelf and your For You page are equally important to your personality, welcome home. Pro Society is a weekly podcast that's part book club, part group chat for anyone who thinks Pride and Prejudice and Love Island deserve the same level of discourse. Each week, we're connecting the dots between books, the internet, and pop culture with your favorite writers, book talk creators, and plenty of overthought opinions. Yeah, I'm obsessed. Listen to Pro Society on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you hear the new episode of the Hey Jonas podcast?
We are at D23, so we'll see who stops by.
The cast of Frozen stopped by. Kristen Bell, Josh Gad, and Idina Menzel.
I auditioned for Frozen.
What?
For Kristoff. They said, okay, what are you going to be singing today? I said, I don't know.
That must have been why you didn't get it.
That's probably why.
Plus, John Stamos, Hayden Christensen from Star Wars, and more.
And I guess I can share that...
No way. Listen to the latest episode of Hey Jonas on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
On the new podcast, Solita, we share the messy reality of traveling alone as a woman.
I can wait 4 hours for the next bus, or this random dude is offering me a ride on his motorcycle. I chose option B.
I'm Julie Pinheiro, and I travel by myself because it's a rare space where I can say yes without asking anyone else first. I'm on a mission to reclaim the word solita, trading the pity for possibility. Listen to Solita on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.